Welcome to the SEC Unfiltered channel. Joining us live here with my co-host, Cole Thompson here. Give him a follow at Mr. Cole Thompson. Sorry, Cole, I had a brain fart there. I was thinking about something real fast. But anyways, appreciate you joining us. We are reacting to day 2 of the SEC Media Days and our second speaker of the day, Josh Heupel, University of Tennessee's head coach. Cole, I mean, we can both attest. Heupel's a pretty reserved, laid-back guy. He's not going to go make too many extreme comments. He was probably about on par with what I thought would happen. Any thoughts, anything you gathered from his statement today in Dallas?
I think the biggest thing is that he likes the depth of this team, which is going to be a major factor for this roster going into 2024. Like many people last year looked at the squad and said, all right, well, we're coming off of a best finish that we've seen in a while. We just went and won an Orange Bowl. We got a quarterback that can throw an orange over 100 yards downfield. We're only going to build off that. And there were questions, and not all was on Milton. I know I'm a giant Milton hater from everyone else in the media. I know how much that I was never a fan of Milton from the get-go. But you can't put all the blame on him in Knoxville last year. There was inconsistency at wide receivers, injuries galore. The offensive line had some question marks on the left side. Secondary remained a mystery. Well, he kind of addressed all those things. They feel a lot more confident about where the secondary is going into this year. They feel a lot more confident about where the pass rush is. They feel a lot better about the depth at linebacker. If they have to go ahead and replace somebody, they're not afraid to see someone step up. They recruited extremely well at the wide receiver spot, both in the transfer portal and on the trail. The running back room remains a mystery. But a mystery is not a negative. It just means that it's unproven in terms of what it could be. Like Dylan Sampson, we know what he's going to be. Who's that next guy that pairs alongside him the way Jalen Wright and Jabari Small were last year? And then, of course, you have the quarterback that you feel really confident in a hand-selected Nico Iamaleava. Remember that's the name, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to hear everyone in America say it wrong. We are not. Nico Iamaleava. They feel really good about where he is right now after sitting last season. The depth of this team is going to, I think, make or break the squad overall. Because
he mentioned he felt really good about it, the best they've had. To your point, he mentioned that.
And so, like, when you talk about these other rosters that maybe won't find their way down to Atlanta, maybe won't find their way into the SEC championship, that doesn't mean you can't find your way into the postseason, which is where, again, LSU resides, which is where Tennessee resides, which is where Ole Miss potentially resides, Missouri resides. And of those squads, the one that I feel really confident in at least sneaking their way to 10-2 is Tennessee, because they do have the talent.
I actually think Tennessee's schedule is pretty beneficial across the board. Again, I think Oklahoma's that swing team to me on a lot of people's schedule. It's going to make your schedule that much difficult, or if Oklahoma's in that 6-6, 7-5 range, it cannot be as challenging. I think they're that big swing team, and you bring it up, Cole. You brought all those teams you just mentioned: Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee. They all play Oklahoma, so I think I think we'd all agree they have some benefits on their schedule. For Heupel as well, I thought ours truly. Chris Phillips, boots on the ground, had probably the best question out there today. Asked about the development. Cole, you mentioned it, of the receiver position with Tulane transfer Chris Brazzell.
Brazzell. We're gonna get that one right.
Chris Brazzell coming over from Tennessee or from Tulane. I thought that was a fantastic question because you go watch his film at Tulane. You talk to people over there with Willie Fritz and them. You could tell they really liked him. Probably thought he was playing a level below he could have. Again, Tennessee, a pretty friendly wide receiver system. The thing I thought Ben Watson on the SEC Network brought up a great point. I think people forget this isn't just a route tree kind of offense for these receivers. They have to block on the perimeter. I think they struggled with that last year. Some of that was Squirrel White. Squirrel White's about 5'9", 5'10". He's a little bit of an undersized guy. You're asking him to go block somebody on the perimeter. He can only hold up so long. I think the key guy coming back had a big year when Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman were there. Brew McCoy, big physical presence on that edge. I think he's going to help that perimeter run game. You know just well as I do, Cole. That's a Tennessee run. When they throw that little smoke screen out there, that's just an easy, hey, let's essentially run into football. I think you could see that a lot if they don't get some of that depth outside of Dylan Sampson coming back. I think they don't have anybody developing that running back room, which is a concern. Our guy Millie Strings here says in the comments, Cam Seldon will be that guy. I think Tennessee's going to need him to step up in some kind of role there because I don't think Dylan Sampson's an every down guy. I think he is going to be a part of it. I just don't think he can handle the load of an entire season. Someone is going to have to help him out, whether that is going to be Cam Seldon, Deshaun Bishop, maybe the Khalifa Keith kid they signed out of Virginia from where was he from? I forget where he was. Maybe in the somewhere near where I think I remember when we were watching him where AI was from, Allen Iverson. Yeah, they're going to need somebody to step up. Sorry, Salem. But for Tennessee, for the most part, I mean, I do think a trickier game. And you tell me if I'm wrong here, Cole. I'm gonna ask you this question. What's your thoughts on that NC State game? I think a lot of people are chalking that up as a win, myself included. But the more you think about it, as it gets closer, I think it's going to be a good challenge. And I think Heupel admitted this, to see where Tennessee is overall from that standpoint for that game. Because I think Dave Dorn and them do a good job. They got a lot of people back from a production standpoint on defense. What's your thoughts on that game going in it? Do you think it's a game Tennessee wins comfortably, or do you think it's going to be a little more challenging than people think?
I've said this before on the program that I think that this is the best non-conference game in all of the SEC for 2024, right, and not in terms of actual ambiance, because you got Michigan versus Texas. That's going to carry a lot of weight. You got USC versus LSU. I mean, these are two offenses that just know how to sling it around the yard. But for what will come down to determining factors specifically in setting the tone for the SEC and the ACC for representation in the Big 12. To me, that is the best game because I feel like that you're looking at this roster that has always had a great defense, because that's just a Dave Durham patent play. Yeah. They always have a good run game. They haven't had the quarterback. You know, Devin Leary, you thought that he was going to be something a little bit higher when he got to Kentucky. He wasn't. His last year was a little bit underwhelming, in my opinion, at NC State. Well, you get Grayson McCall, and Grayson McCall doesn't turn the ball over. Like, that was his big MO at Coastal Carolina. He's upgrading his offensive personnel and the competition he's going up against, but I do think it's a tone setter. It is a neutral site location game in Charlotte. That's another big deal that I think factors in for this matchup overall. You brought up Chris Brazzell. The thing that I like about him is that he has that 6'5" ability to win inside the red zone. A name that wasn't brought up that I thought should have been brought up, Holden Stays, the tight end. Absolutely is going to be, I think, a difference maker. The only reason why he transferred was because Mitchell Evans is back in South Bend and he wants to garner that same amount of potential. And so he now goes into an offense that's really up tempo. And I think that's a really big blessing in disguise that's going to put defenses on roller skates at moments. Is they're still going to be running this up tempo attack. They're not going to have the helmet and they're not going to have the mic in the helmet. They're going to be reading the plays as they're moving downfield. It's going to keep defenses wondering. And so that's that's another big deal. I like the wide receiver room in general. Mike Matthews, wide receiver, not getting talked about enough. The same way that you mentioned a guy like Ryan Wingo or Perry Thompson, or I would even maybe throw in, maybe not Cam Coleman, but certainly around those tier 2 guys that aren't going to break out in that same way. I think he could be an immediate stud. I wonder what Deontay Thornton's going to look like in this offense going into year 2.
He have a bounce back because he was a guy they thought would step up last year. You're right.
They thought he was going to be a stud, and he had just far too many inconsistent plays. He had a few too many drops. But if he lives up to the hype this year, you don't need to have that number 1 wide receiver. You just need to have consistency at the receiver position for a young quarterback as he builds. But the NC State game, I totally agree with Heupel right now. It's a good litmus test. I really think, and I know Millie's talking about it in the comment section over here, I think the Oklahoma game is a good litmus test. And it's a really good test for a young quarterback as he transitions. Because we all know that the talent is there for Nico. The question is, how quickly will he be able to how quickly will he be able to respond if he does face any pressure? And honestly, I could see him immediately flourishing and becoming that quarterback that you say, already a superstar after one major game.
No, Cole, I think to your point, you brought it up. 2 things off what you said. I think you made fantastic points across the board there. But I think you brought up Deontay Thornton. Talking to Oregon people, they usually, when you talk to people, and you can attest to this, that they've left their program, there's usually, but they weren't really they were kind of like, dude, this kid would show out at practice. I totally expect him to have a big year at Tennessee. That was last year. Followed up with him. They're like, I think another year in a Heupel system will help him. So I'm with you. That's a guy I think people may throw back to the back burner when thinking about guys like Chris Brazzell. But remember, like you said, he's been in the program 2nd year. I think that could be a big help. And then you brought up the helmet communication. Heupel was asked that. How's that going to – I think Tennessee's a team people are intrigued about hearing that. Because
they should.
Because the helmet cuts off at 15 seconds
Yeah.
Or sorry, before the play, 10 seconds for the play clock. So that'll be interesting. But Tennessee on average is snapping the ball with about 5 seconds left. So I'll be interested. I think he did say they're still going to signal. They're still going to signal. Clark Lee was asked from a defensive standpoint yesterday. He's like, we're still going to have to signal, or when we're substituting in, we're going to have to send it in with somebody, because he's like, these up-tempo, no-huddle teams are still going to go try to get a snap off before we can even communicate on defense. So Tennessee, I think, is kind of that team that will be interesting to see. I think they signal just because that's going to be what they're going to want to go tempo, get the ball
They
off.
should, though, because that's what works for them, and it keeps defenses guessing. And I love that Clark Lee brought up yesterday that, Tennessee is probably going to be one that signals because they have to. Because of the way that you get your offense to hum in a certain light is because of the way that you move. And that's why you have to see more players step up. That's why when you look at the numbers this year, you could see 2 1,000-yard receivers if Nico does hit his stride. And it wouldn't be shocking because they're averaging the last 2 years, they've averaged, I think it's the most plays per line of scrimmage per drive. And they have the shortest time from first play to second play. So they're always counteracting, and they always are moving 2 steps ahead of the defense. And that's where I think you have guys that can maybe end up having that type of success. And it can be anyone. Squirrel White, the kid is a human lightning in a bottle. Like, he would be speeding in some school zones if you got him at full speed. On top of that, you have versatility and size. You have flexibility with route running. A guy like Brazel, we don't talk about this enough when it comes to route concepts, and it's been a big deal. But like the route concepts, they're not all established for every wide receiver at Tennessee. That won't be a problem for Brazel. He has everything under his book because the way that they ran the offense down in New Orleans last year with Willie Fritz. So that might be an area to where there are certain plays specifically designed for him to get open against weaker cornerbacks, especially in SEC play. And Tennessee is a really intriguing team to me this year because I could easily see them, especially if Nico hits, getting to Atlanta. I could see them easily winning the SEC. I could also see them going 8-4, 9-3, and finding their way to the ReliaQuest Bowl, finding their way to the Citrus Bowl once again. It all comes down to quarterback play, but they have the personnel. Like, I think that's the big takeaway that you look at from everyone that you've spoken to around the facility, all the moves that were made this offseason. Tennessee got 2 of my favorite transfers. I mean, just case in point, Zalance Hurd and Holden Stays immediately have already caught my attention. And they did last year, and they did during the recruiting cycle. Now they get to be a part of this offense that is really, I think, going to be beneficial to them and their progression going into the NFL. Like Darnell Wright was a former right tackle that moved his way into, top 10 stats at Tennessee. I think Zalance Hurd can do that from the left side. Yeah. And then Stays, again, security blanket for tight end. They have the pieces there. It all is going to come down to Nico.
Yeah. No, I mean, Brian Kelly was even asked about Hurd yesterday, and he said he was a loss from a day. Obviously, I mean, LSU's got arguably the 2 best tackles in the country. So, I mean, it makes sense. You're right. Tennessee, this is it. It's just year 3 for him. You would expect if Nico is who he is, Tennessee's going to be in the hunt to play in Atlanta, like you mentioned, in December, and be in a playoff position for them. But, I mean, to Millie Strings' point here, front 7 will eat Oklahoma's underwhelming line. Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma's replacing 5 of their starters, top 6 guys. They have a first-time starter in Jackson Arnold. That will be interesting as well. I think that'll be a good challenge. I mean, Cole, if I'm going to ask you a question, when do you think inevitably there's going to hit some adversity for Nico? On that schedule, where do you see that? Is it going to be in Norman? Will it be maybe in Fayetteville the next week? Maybe when Florida comes to town? Hell, maybe it's in Charlotte, a game we talked about early on. Is there a game you have circled where you're like, I think he's going to face some adversity there? I'm real interested to see how he responds to that.
I want to see if he can duplicate the similar success he had against Iowa in the bowl game against Oklahoma. Because Oklahoma, they're going to have question marks on the offensive line. I think everyone knows that. Bill Beatonbow, he gets the best play out of what he's given. Yeah. This is going to be a tough challenge for him. Like even for somebody that does believe that Oklahoma will be a major player in college football for the long term in the SEC, this is where I have my question marks. I do. But that defense, I don't have any question marks. I don't. They're bringing in a ton of talent that has already been established. Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman. They went and they got Dominic Williams in the transfer portal. That was a stud that could have gone anywhere in the country. There were multiple teams in the SEC that wanted him. Oklahoma won the battle at the end of the day. I think that's going to be the game where he faces his first real test of adversity. Arkansas is sleepy. Arkansas, I will say, the week after because of depending on what this offense looks like against Oklahoma. That might be where you start to see him throw into double coverage. Maybe you see him end up making the wrong read at the wrong time. Those are some questions that I have, but I think that Oklahoma is the first real test for Nico. I think that he will be able to find his own rhythm against NC State. NC State's defense this year is taking a little bit of a step back, kind of like the way I've talked about with LSU. If you're okay with having the offense maybe give up 10 points for the defense to not give up 10 points, you feel a lot better about the situation moving forward. But for me personally, when I look right now, I think that Oklahoma game is going to be the first real litmus test for a guy like Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make a real argument that Oklahoma defense could be the second best defense he plays all year. I mean, I like Alabama's front seven, but they have major question marks. Hell, Nick Saban pointed it out yesterday in the secondary. I mean, I'm with you. I don't have a ton of real question marks with the Oklahoma defense. I feel like I know they're going to be pretty good. I feel pretty good.
They're going to be great. They're not a good like Dave. The problem is people are saying, "Oh, well, they're a good Big 12 defense." No, they're a good defense. They were a great Big 12 defense. Now they're a good.
I like
defense.
the linebackers and Stutzman, and I watched the Kip Lewis kid the other day. He's a good player. I like it. Yeah, I like their defense, and it's a first road game, SEC road game. It's Josh Heupel's return. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's gonna be a challenge. You do make a good point, and Billy Strings brought it up too. That Arkansas game. It's a sleepy game because, like you said, that Oklahoma game is going to be an emotional game because they're going to feel it from their coach. I mean, Josh Heupel really wants to win that game. I mean, just like me and you would, you're going to go play our alma mater. I don't blame him. Like you said, that's going to be an emotional game. NC State's going to be a hyped up game. It's your Big Nine kind of. You're right. Arkansas is the game. It's a little sleepy, and me and you can both attest to this. Josh Heupel's not the greatest road coach. Even going back to his UCF days, he's not the greatest road coach. They have big, epic collapses on the road every year outside of, I'll give him the benefit out. His first year, they didn't really have it. But his second year, they go and drop the ball at South Carolina, just get exploited and essentially knock themselves out of the playoffs. Last year, granted, I think.
To be fair, with the South Carolina game, they also lose their starting quarterback that had been working for them the entire year. So that's big.
But they were losing that game even before. You could feel like South Carolina had a ton of that momentum into that game. And then, but I mean, Spencer Rattler lit him. What did he go for 5 touchdowns in that game? I forget what the yardage.
5 or 6, something like
that. And then last year, totally drops the ball to a Florida team on the road. They really had no business losing to. I understand Mays was out, that hurt them, and then they were complete no-shows in Bryant-Denny in the second half.
Yeah,
14 at halftime, did nothing. It was a completely different Joe Milton in the second half. And I'm agree with you. I don't think everything was Joe Milton last year. He didn't have help. I mean, what was it? There was a game against A&M where Mel Keaton dropped one that he could have crawled into the end zone. It hit him right in the hands. He dropped it. There were some drops last year. But I want to see Heupel and them in year 4. I said year 3. I need to correct myself. Year 4 earlier, head into year 4. I said year 3 earlier. I want to see them bring it on the road. That's the thing you see that's different when a team takes that next step. They usually have that critical road win that you're like, damn, dude. They went in and I get, again, Nick Saban's the GOAT. You can't use him. But when they went into Georgia in 2008, into Athens, into Sanford, and beat the crapper up 31-0 against the preseason number 3 team in the country, you could tell they arrived. Georgia and them, the great teams embrace road games. They don't go like, how do we communicate? I mean, you heard Cedric Tillman after they lost to Georgia 2 years ago on the road. We couldn't communicate, dude. We couldn't hear anything. So the offensive shutdown, I want to see Heupel and them take that on the road against a good opposition. And I know people are going to be like, well, they won in Tiger Stadium 2 years ago. Game was at 11 a.m. Again, win's a win. They beat LSU the year they won the SEC West. Let's go into a big night game, afternoon game. I want to see it hitting on all cylinders. Like that's where I feel like you can really be like, if I'm a Tennessee fan, and I said it in my preview, I think this year will tell you, is Tennessee, I think their floor is always going to be 8 wins with Josh Heupel, which is good. That's a compliment. That's his floor.
But that's not what you're expecting in the SEC. That's
correct. I think that's your floor. I think this year we're going to find out, is he going to be closer to that 8-9 win column consistently, or if he goes and wins 10, makes the playoffs this year, I think he's going to be closer to 10-3. I think 10-11 wins. I think this year tells us the story about Josh Heupel because he has his quarterback. But again, I think there's going to be some more highs and lows than people think with Nico, because I think we're putting some unfair expectations on the kid, not thinking that there's going to. Someone mentioned to Heupel today, like, hey, do you think there's going to be the way he played against Iowa is just going to be who he's going to be and roll in every week? Yeah, I'm with you. There's going to be ups and downs, dude. The guy hasn't played a true road game yet. And I'm with you. I think that Oklahoma game is going to be a phenomenal litmus test. But I think overall, not to go on, I mean, we've been going for 20 minutes. But I think this year is the big telling point for Josh Heupel to see if they're just going to be good under him are they going to go be great and compete for an SEC and national title on a year-to-year basis? Cole, and I'm going to leave you with this one. Question for you. Anything change after listening to this? You feel different about Tennessee either way, yay or nay?
No, because if I've had the same 3 question marks that I needed to be answered this year. Number one, can you build around your quarterback and not just force your quarterback to be the savior and solution? Because of the one thing that you notice is once they turned to Joe Milton, as good as it was, they still went 9-4. You need to be able to have a great supporting cast around him. Does that supporting cast with the new transfers, the recruits coming in, build around Nico Iamaleava? Number 2, can you win one of the monumental games on the road? Because if you have to at this point, there's 2 games that I have circled. Oklahoma to start SEC play on the road at Georgia. Can you hold your own in one of those matchups? Because if you want to be a player in the SEC, now with Texas and Oklahoma joining, you got to be able to show that you can win on the road. And number 3, and this is a non-negotiable whatsoever, you have to beat Florida. You have to beat Florida. If you can't beat Florida, that becomes a question mark for you.
That's a must win for them this year, especially at home. I'm with you.
You got them at home. You got a non-Saban led Alabama team coming in, and you know what? This roster might be better than that 2022 roster, but you cannot lose to Florida. You can't use the excuse. You can't go ahead and try and fool it to me that you believe that that's going to happen. That Florida just has enough. You can't. You want me to buy into you? You got to beat Florida. That is my must-win game this year for Tennessee. If they can do that, I'm not going to be shocked if they go find their way to Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I get it. Tennessee fans have nightmares about Florida, even go back to the Steve Spurrier days. That's just a program in the past 30, 35 years they haven't had a lot of success against. I'm with you this year, Cole. There's no excuse. You get them at home in a year that you're better than. Tennessee's up the line of scrimmage, I think, on both sides of the ball. I mean, I think the offense is more product of the system, but give Rodney Garner and that defense a lot of credit. It's arguably a top 3 front 7 in the league. I'm like you. Last question before we get out. I want to see the secondary improved. And the thing if I'm a Tennessee fan, it got me a little fired up for Josh Heupel. Again, offensive guy, offensive head coach. They brought in Jamad McCoy, transfer from Oregon State. He talked about how he became a good leader in the offseason for him, has been leading a lot of workouts. And the thing he also brought, not about McCoy, is how much better of a tackling team they were in space in the spring and how he feels it's going to be. That's key to me. I feel like in today it's such a spatial game. Your corners have to be able to tackle. I used to argue with coaches all the time when I worked in college football when we were watching high school film. Like, hey, we're going to go do the eval tape, profile tape, has the good, bad, ugly. We're going to put tackling on there. There were some secondary coaches that would get pissed off if the head coach saw that because they're like, who cares if he can't tackle? All I want him to do is cover. That sounds great until he can't get off a block on the perimeter and they're going 80 on us because they didn't stretch the field. We just can't tackle in space. So I think that's key. I'm glad Heupel brought that up. That made me think, hey, that secondary could be good. So for me, if the secondary improves just a little, I like Tennessee a lot heading into 2024. But Cole, before we get out of here, anything else you want to add?
They got a great defensive line. All you got to do is have decent secondary play. And I'm not even saying you have to have elite secondary play. You have to have decent secondary play.
I think Joshua Josephs has a massive year for him because James Pierce is going to get doubled.
He has to. He has to.
I think Joseph's going to have a big year for him as well. But again, guys, I appreciate you joining us. We're live reacting to Josh Heupel. He's the second coach today. For the rest of the afternoon, we have Oklahoma's Brent Venables and then Missouri's Eli Drinkowitz will finish today. We'll be back with those reactions as well, guys. But I appreciate you joining. For myself, Dave Shumate, and my co-host Cole Thompson. We are from the SEC Unfiltered platform. Guys, like, subscribe, follow us on all social platforms. Chris Phillips down there in Dallas at the Omni Hotel with boots on the ground. So give us a follow if you want to follow all the action coming from SEC Media Day 2024. For myself, Dave Shumate, my guy, Cole Thompson, have a great day.